And I'd like to welcome everyone to today's session of Gems from the Wisdom Traditions, a conversation circle. This is a circle in which we really encourage all participants to share their life wisdom from whatever traditions they have studied, paths that they have walked. Today, our topic is based on the fact that we are about to celebrate in America Thanksgiving. And so we have the topic of prayer, meditation, and gratitude. We have the most exquisite speaker to start off our conversation today. And to introduce him, I'm going to turn it over to Cliff Tilletson. And Cliff, you can tell his topic as well, if you would be so kind.
Sure. I was just thinking that there's a saying here, I think in America, that when you're given lemons, you might as well make lemonade. And I'm thinking that COVID, the lemonade that we can make out of COVID is these Zoom conversations where we can actually have a conversation that's global. And so today, in our conversation from Gems from the Wisdom Traditions, we have someone from all the way over in Rajasthan, India, speaking to us. He's a modern day Gandhian, an incredible servant of humanity, has been a great inspiration to our family. And his name is Dr. Prakash Tiagi. And we're absolutely thrilled to be able to have this conversation with him on the subject of Gandhian prayer, right, Renee? Is Gandhian prayer?
Yeah, Gandhi's prayer meetings.
Gandhi's prayer meetings.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking just before I turn it over to Prakash, just say a few things about, to me, it seems that Gandhi's teachings, his philosophy are so important to all of us today because of climate change. And we think that maybe with technology we can get out of this issue, but that's not going to work. We need to reharmonize ourselves with nature and with the source of nature, which we often refer to as God. And so this topic of meditation, prayer, and gratitude seems to be so in keeping with all the teachings that Gandhi did. In particular, one of Gandhi's great teachings was Sarvodaya, which is universal uplift, but universal uplift by lifting the least first. And this is at heart of what Prakash Tiagi and his group practice. His group is a non-profit, non-governmental organization called Gravis, which was formed in 1983. And they work tirelessly with the poor farmers and manual laborers in the Thar Desert. And it's incredible the scope of what he and his organization are doing, helping, at last estimate, about 1.3 million poor farmers and villagers have better lives. And that's about 1,500 different actual villages. They started with working with water resources, water conservation, agriculture. And they branched out to helping women gain their rightful place in the community with self-help groups and leadership, and started schools and hospitals and helping the miners and dealing with the silicosis in the mines that they have there. And they just, everything that they can do to help others, they're doing it. Before I turned over to Prakash, because this theme is also on gratitude, gratitude to Gandhians in particular, I read on their website that Subba Rao, a great Gandhian, passed a month ago at 92. Today is actually Universal Children's Day, and Subba Rao did so much throughout India for helping children. He, as a child himself, was involved in the Quit India movement at the age of 13. And then his mother passed a year ago, just a year and 6 days ago. And she was someone who was just an inspiration to everybody in India, as well as over here in the West, and was just an incredible being that our family got to know. And so we just want to honor them and express our gratitude to those great Ghandians before I turn it over to Prakash. But so I don't take up any more time. Prakash, please share with us your thoughts. I did get to join one of their prayer meetings, by the way, when I brought my daughter to their NGO, where she stayed for 6 months, and I got to stay for a couple of days and got to see actually their prayer meetings, which they start every day before all their workers will go out on motorcycles and bicycles to the various villages. And they have a bunch of substations, and they'll have prayers in those meetings too, in those locations as well. I remember hearing some amazing music. I can't remember the instrument. It was a beautiful instrument at one of the substations as well. So they start every day with a Ghandian prayer before they go out and do their work. So Prakash, we're so grateful that you would join us way over here on our side of the world. Please take it away.
Thank you, Cliff, for your generous introduction. Namaste, everyone from India. Thank you for making me a part of your community, of your circle this morning. The sun has not risen yet in India. As I speak, in the next few minutes, there will be more light, there will be more brightness. And that's probably the most suitable time to speak about prayers. In our tradition, the prayers are offered at the time of sunrise or just before that, because that we believe is the most transformative time of the day, that we believe is the time when the darkness leads to the brightness, and that's the concept of the prayers, which we offer every morning. As Cliff was telling, it has been a tradition that we have been following for many years, ever since Gravis has founded. Although there have been disruptions because of this cruel pandemic, which has not allowed us to be in groups, but we have continued to pray in individual capacities, and hopefully we will go back to the groups like we all used to be in pre-COVID times. Firstly, I would like to say that my family and Gravis have been extremely fortunate to find friends in all of you, and Tilletson family in particular. Sandhya, Cliff and Rini's daughter, had come to live with us many years ago as a young student, and that's how this relationship, this bonding started, and it has gone on over all these years. It's a bonding of mutual learning, of exchanges, of cultural differences and similarities, and of just finding a common path in the journey of humanity. So we very appreciate you being friends with us. We very deeply appreciate all your support, especially your support in the battle against the pandemic recently, which was very gratefully received, and which was of great help to a large number of people in the Thar Desert. So thank you for your support. Thank you for inviting me to this circle. Prayers. Do I have your permission of reciting a few lines from the poems, from the prayers that we usually have in our organization, in our culture? So if I have your permission, I will recite a few lines, because the full version will take a lot of time. And I will go through a couple of parts of that prayer, which is an all religion prayer. We believe that all religions should pray together in the kind of prayers that we do, in the kind of cultures that we cultivate. And you are welcome to listen to it in Hindi first, and then I'll try to provide a very bad English translation. I don't have it written, but I will just use my senses to make it as understandable as possible and in my reasonable English. So part one. ले जा असत्य से सत्य के प्रति, तम से ले जा ज्योति के प्रति, मृत्यु से ले जा अमृत के प्रति, चलें साथ और बोलें साथ, दिल से हिल मिल जिए साथ, अच्छे कर्म करें हम साथ, बैठ के साथ भजें हम नाथ, हो संकल्प समान समान, हो जन जन के हृदय समान, सबके मन में भाव समान, निश्चय तब हो कार्य समान. In English, so in all religion prayers that we do, this is called the Vedic version. Vedas are India's old traditional books, which provide us all the knowledge of rituals, of history. So this is called Vedic prayer, comes from the Aryan background of our civilization, of our culture, of our country. And so in English, it would roughly mean that God, please take me from untruth to truth. Please take me from darkness to light. Please take me from death to eternity. Let us all be together. Let us all mix together. Let us all pray together in the name of God. When our hearts will be together, when our thoughts will be together, then our actions will be similar and will be meaningful. Part one. Part two. शांति का वाद्य बना तू मुझे प्रभु, शांति का वाद्य बना तू मुझे, हो तिरस्कार वहां करूं स्नेह, हो हमला तो क्षमा करूं मैं, हो जहां भूल मैं सत्य करूं, हो संदेह वहां विश्वास, घोर निराश वहां करूं आस, हो अंधियार वहां पे प्रकाश, हो जहां दुख वहां करूं हास, शांति का वाद्य बना तू मुझे प्रभु, शांति का वाद्य बना तू मुझे. It's English meaning. So the first part that I shared was from the Vedic prayers. This part that I shared was from a Christian prayer. And in this entire fuller version of the prayer, there is a part that comes from every possible religion that exists in this world, or at least in India. So it comes from the Christian prayer. I share these two parts because I particularly find them motivational, powerful, and inspiring, without any other reasons. Those were the reasons for me to share these two parts. this part 2, what does it mean in English? God, please make me the instrument of peace. God, please empower me to convert hate into love, that I shall be able to forgive if I am attacked, that I should have no secrets, that I should be able to raise hope when there is disappointment, that I should be able to bring light when there is darkness, that I should be able to bring happiness when there is sorrow. God, please make me an instrument for peace. That was part 2. And this is just to share, this is just to let you know how we pray. What does prayer mean to us, and how did it start in the Gandhian ideology, which, as Cliff was saying, is so relevant, so important, not only for India, but for the global community, especially amid what we are seeing, amid what is happening. So as far as my reading goes, and I'm quite sure that I'm correct, Gandhi, before becoming Mahatma means great soul, which he was referred to later during his public life in the 20th century, actually. But before that, towards the end of the 19th century, after his education of law, Gandhi traveled to South Africa, as many of you would know, to practice law, but also to lead the civil rights movement in South Africa to oppose the British rule. And then there was a very abrupt transition in Gandhi's life from a suited lawyer, attorney. He became a man of people. His clothes, his way of speaking, his ideology, his way of thinking, everything changed very, very suddenly. And then he founded his first ashram. Ashram, I'm sure, may not be an unfamiliar word to many of you. It's a place where people gather. It's a place where ideologies meet. It's a place where differences are resolved. That's what an ashram is. I think in this circle, we are sitting in an ashram. Gravis is an ashram, for example. That's the notion behind having an ashram. So when Gandhi set up its first ashram, he understood that to bring people together, to resolve differences, and to have common approaches, prayer is important. And that's how in Gandhi's life, prayers have started. This is late 19th century. Then he traveled to India after several years to join and to lead India's independence campaign, and prayers continued. And Gandhi was assassinated before his last prayer. So the prayers continued to be an integral part of his life. For Gravis, prayers are very important. I grew up with these prayers. As far as I recall, and I can definitely recall when I was 6, 7 years old. Beyond that is a bit challenging. But when I was 6, 7, since then, I remember praying with my parents, with my immediate family, and with the group of people that we used to work with. We are still working. Gravis started as a very small organization in early 1980s, and then it grew, become expanded a bit larger. But one thing that did not change was our prayers. every morning in our offices, in our centers, in our project areas, there is a prayer. And in these prayers, we recite, we share, we tell each other the messages that I just translated to you in English. I personally believe, as well as organizationally, Gravis believes that prayers have three important principles. Without those, the prayers are not complete or they are not true. The first thing is that on the religious lines, the prayers should bring all religions together. If it divides on the basis of religion and does not unite, then it is not true prayer. Then there is something wrong. If it establishes supremacy of one religion over another, if it does not honor all religions in the same way, if it does not take all faiths together, then the prayer is not true. And therefore, in our prayers, which we do every single day, barring pandemic, which I just mentioned, and we have been doing this in Gravis culture for 38 years, every single morning, all religions have to be remembered. The second principle that comes to my mind and to our belief is that prayers can be individual. It's perfectly all right to have individual prayers, prayers in privacy, prayers in solitude. But prayers are also a tool to express group solidarity. And that's which is more relevant in our organization, in our culture. So when it's a prayer in the group, the second principle is that when we pray, we are all equal. This is beyond religions. This is about power. This is about wealth. This is about caste. This is about creed. This is about ethnicity. This is about gender. This is about literacy levels. And all the things that would create inequality in society, in India in more particular, but also in other parts of the world, such as the United States. And wherever there is a possibility of inequality, the prayer is the place to bridge that inequality and to bring equality. When we pray to our God, to our Almighty, to our nature, whoever we believe in, to our planet, to our Mother Earth, to our environment, we are all equal. There is nobody who's a director, there is nobody who's a CEO, there is nobody who's a supervisor, there is nobody who's a man, there is nobody who's a woman. We are all equal. And the third principle, which we believe is also extremely important, is that prayers need to be honest in terms of admitting weaknesses, in terms of realizing that there are shortcomings. And then prayers would help in drawing strength from weaknesses. So it's admission of what is not going well, it's admission of the limitations, it's the admission of the problems in work and life. So those three principles we believe are extremely important: bringing all religions together, creating all forms of equality, and admitting that there are weaknesses, and those weaknesses should lead to strengths. In our culture of India, ancient India, we believe that the world is a family. There is a very old Sanskrit saying which says, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. And in English, it means, the whole saying means that you are a relative to me and you are a stranger to me, as a thinking of people who have a small hearts. Those who have magnanimous hearts, the whole world is a family. And I believe that prayers are extremely important to convert this whole world into a family. When we become a family, there is nothing which is mine and yours. There is nothing which is not for us, which does not belong to us. When it's collective ownership, when it's relationships, when it's exchanges, when it's mutual harmony, then we come together and then most of our problems are solved. Last two submissions before I take a pause. And as I speak, the sun is rising and the birds are chirping, which you can hear from the background. Gravis, as an organization, I think Cliff has already provided and Rini has already provided introduction. We work for the most needy communities of India, and we believe that we contribute to the causes of needy communities across the world. We are not confined to the welfare of our people only. We believe that we are connected with everyone. Of course, what we are doing is based on the resources and capacities that we have. But in a way, we are inspiring, we are motivating other communities to work like we do. We are happy to provide our lessons, our learnings. In all of this, what we do, if we have grown, if we have remained dedicated to our mission and vision, the prayers have played very important roles. The prayers provide us the opportunity to reflect, to introspect, and to just understand what are our problems and what are our people's pains. Those pains could be within our group. Our people can be going through sufferings. Our team members could be going through sufferings. Our communities may have grief, loss, other issues. And these prayers, apart from remembering the nature, apart from remembering all the religions, apart from remembering the God, provide us a space to sit together, to talk together, and to understand how we can be of support to each other. We believe that monetary support is extremely important, but the support of being there, support of solidarity, the spirituality of togetherness is also very, very powerful. Last submission. Prayers are an important tool of non-violence. Today we are remembering Gandhi very rightly, because Gandhi led non-violence movement in this whole world for a very significant amount of time. And others, such as Dr. Martin Luther King and other global leaders, followed that path of non-violence. And I think a lot of people look at non-violence as not hurting others physically, merely. That's one understanding, one meaning of non-violence. But what goes sometimes overlooked is the processes, the conditions that lead to violence. And that is discrimination, that is inequality, that is lack of understanding, that is underdevelopment. All these need to be bridged. All these need to be taken care of. And when we talk of non-violence, it does not confine, the whole meaning does not confine to being non-violent to living organisms only, either human or animals. It is about being non-violent to our nature, to our environment, to our climate, which we often forget. So non-violence is a more holistic, more broad term and notion. And once again, I don't see how we can be non-violent. I don't see how we can be together. I don't see how we can be justified if we don't have prayers in our life. Prayers are the only way forward to ensure that there is a non-violent society and a community.
I think maybe this is actually a perfect launching point, and let's see what our participants are particularly interested in pulling from, because you've brought up such a beautiful banquet of heartwarming thoughts. And Caroline?
One of the problems we live in is a lot of violent and negative speech. And I'm wondering what your suggestion is about how to kind of wipe away violent and negative speech. Is it just by prayer, or what, your whole community, or is there something you can suggest that could be an antidote to the bad vibes in our civilization?
It's a problem that that is there everywhere in this whole world, especially in the age of social media, when it is so easy to abuse and to say things which are unpleasant. I think it's all about tolerance. It's about finding greater degree of tolerance. And if I go back to the Gandhian ideology, some of you may have heard about this notion of Gandhi using 3 monkeys that would not see bad, that would not listen to bad, and that would not speak bad. So I think that is the message. I would just try to ignore as much as possible and would not respond to things which are offensive, with the hope that the opposite side will also follow that path. It's very difficult to do that. It requires a lot of tolerance, but that is what we need to do. And hopefully there will be more harmony and more peace.
Thank you.
Yeah. And do you find, Prakashji, that as people intone prayer, they're less likely to use their own mouths in that kind of violent or negative way?
Yes, absolutely. Prayers are very powerful in bringing people to groups which are based on harmony, based on mutual understanding. The basic purpose, one of the basic purposes of these prayers is to resolve differences, to admit differences, and then resolve differences. So therefore, I strongly believe that they are the right approach, the right forum.
So if I could just follow up, when I was listening to you, in addition to having prayers that are memorized, you have a follow-up session, it sounds like, that is impromptu, where people bring their best self, hopefully, to the table and have this conversation to meet each other about their ideas. So it's both something that is memorized and recited, and then also a more free-form flow of speech.
Yes, so every prayer session has a memorized prayer that collectively is sung, basically. It's in the form of a song, which is sung. And then that leads to a discussion in which everyone is welcome to participate. And that discussion first focuses on a particular topic of the day. It could be nonviolence, it could be natural resource management, it could be truth, it could be peace. That topic is discussed. And then there is an open dialogue between everyone, and everyone is welcome to speak.
Robert.
You talked about one needs to look at the causes of violence. And, you know, one thinks of anger, hatred, greed, attachment, those kind of things as being the seeds of violence. And it looks like when I was looking at the criteria you had for real prayer, that this would help reduce violence in oneself. Do you think it helps prevent or does anything for violence in the world?
Yes, I think when people come together in groups, the sense of unity becomes greater because the problem that we are seeing in today's world, which also relates to the last comment, the last question about speech, abuse, and that's a very severe form of nonviolence as well. Abusing, hurting others is nonviolence. It's all about the way we have been divided into sections, the way we have been divided into different ways of life by just labeling us as we and they, you know. I'm like this, but you are like that. We are like this and they are like that. And these are either religious divides, cultural divides. I think those divisions should be taken away. I think people need to be united, and that unity needs to travel across cultures, across countries around the world. Of course, there would always be physical limitations because of resources, but unity in prayers is extremely important to create a nonviolent society.
I believe Maurice was next.
Yes, I know I've heard that Gravis, goes out to all these different communities in the desert. And recently, I read very briefly in America here that Prime Minister Modi has decided to withdraw a lot of laws that would have caused a lot of pain to those who do agricultural work and have a little ownership, if you want to call it that, to agricultural land. And that land seems to be a critical issue, as Vandana Shiva and others have pointed out. So my question is, from your viewpoint and standpoint with Gravis and the Thar Desert, does Prime Minister Modi's policies affect you? And are there issues around proper agricultural use of land and of the people on it and how they work it?
Two answers, two parts of answers to your questions. Firstly, the farming laws have been brought in the form of reforms as promised by the government, which apparently had solutions to the problems that farmers were facing over a long period of time: poverty, not getting right price for their produce. So those were the problems that the new laws were supposed to resolve, the problem was that the farmers were not a part of the process. The problem was a law was made for farmers without consulting farmers. The problem was they were given a new direction to which they did not want to travel. And that's violent. That's not non-violence. Asking people to do that they don't want to do is not correct, especially in a democracy like India. And that's why all of us saw that extremely non-violent, peaceful protest, which lasted for nearly 1.5 years in our national capital. You may have got the news that yesterday the Prime Minister announced the repeal of these laws, that he will go to the Parliament. He accepts that there was a mistake. And so that is actually being acknowledged as one of the most successful civil disobedience kind of movement in recent times. It's massive. Coming to what Gravis thinks of farmers and our issues, our farmers are particularly impoverished, being a desert, as you would imagine, while poverty in India among farmers is well known, widespread, but Rajasthan and Thar Desert is even more severe levels because of droughts, because of rainwater scarcity. And Gravis has been taking a very holistic approach. Our focus is small and marginal farmers, which have small land holding size. Not that we don't want to look at other farmers who are bigger, but in the capacities that we have, we believe that we will be able to do the justice to the most marginalized. And we implement a large number of programs focused on rainwater harvesting, on seed development, on organic farming. And the idea is that firstly, the farmers should have enough produce to feed themselves, because hunger, starvation is a big problem. And then the second goal is that if they would have surplus, then they are able to sell those crops in the markets and to make income. And just one last point is that these reforms that that you asked about and I spoke about, they were about the incomes and not about the most fundamental poverty-related problems. But again, the problem was, is, and it would be unjustified for any organization to take this approach. Consult people who are the stakeholders, and that's what had happened in this context.
And can I imagine that these nonviolent protests, civil disobedient acts, probably included prayer as they were being done?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. The farmers in thousands, they camped in the national capital of New Delhi, and they had prayers, they had reflections, and a lot of collective exercises that gave them the strength. So absolutely.
Thank you so much. David.
Thank you so much for the inspiring talk and for everyone contributing. Maurice, you always humble me with your expansive view of things. My thoughts seem so limited after hearing you. I recall a prayer that my mother had on the wall that spoke to me. Dear Lord, please make my words sweet and tender, for tomorrow I may have to eat them. And that always spoke to me, about maybe speaking too soon. But when the years went by, I was reminded by one of my teachers, something that the Buddha is purported to have said, and you might correct me on this, but he said, before delivering a communication, you might ask yourself 3 questions. Is it true? Is it kind? And is it necessary? And that has always struck me, that last one in particular. I was reminded by the first question about how to deal with the ease of negative conversation that happens through social media, even just texting. And I have on occasion, when I read some of these communications, just to ask those simple questions of the people that seem to think that it's okay to communicate things that are maybe not true, certainly not kind, and absolutely not necessary. And I wonder if we could just some way infuse the culture with that basic wisdom that maybe we should think these things before we spew forth. Just a thought. And thank you.
Beautiful comment, David. Thank you so much. Roger?
Oh, yes. Thank you, Renee. Yeah, thanks for the really, as the last speaker said, a very inspiring talk, and the need for us to recognize that all religions are really a language to connect with the universal energy and the understanding of life. And I wanted to ask you, it's become very popular in the United States in the last some years to do meditation, and maybe particularly mindfulness meditation. It's become pretty mainstream these days. Does that fit into what you're into prayer? I've heard it said prayer is speaking to God and meditation is listening to God. Is there a role, and does meditation come into play with your philosophy and what you're doing?
Yeah, thank you, Roger. One quick word to David and then to you, Roger. I think, David, thank you for your comment. I think there are many victories one need to go through in life, and one of those victories, one of those individual victories, is to not to be provoked. It's all about being provoked. It's all about provocation, and this whole negative speech business is about provoking others. I find it very difficult to not be provoked as an individual, but I think I'm making progress. And by the time I'm a little more senior, I would be less provoked. So I think that's where the key is. And so thank you, David. I am totally with you. Roger, thank you for your question. Meditation has been a very old part of our culture, of our civilization's culture, which is Indian, regardless of which religion. And there is a Hindi word called Maun Vrat. Maun Vrat translates into silence. And that is something that we have been practicing for a very long time. In our prayers culture as well, in Gandhi's offerings as well, Maun Vrat, or silence, is given extremely important place. And in every prayer meeting, the meditation that you are referring to, we do have a 2 minutes silence in which we not only close our eyes, but we try to remember the things that are happening around the world. So meditation has been there historically. And I think silence, if meditation can be understood that way, is in itself very, very powerful.
Thank you. Renee, could I say one other thing about David's question and answer?
Yes, of course. And Roger, by the way, Prakash is someone who has done a lot here in Hawaii and elsewhere in the world to promote peace, to promote harmony amongst all the many different religions and cultures. He did a wonderful, huge 3-day participatory event. Actually, David and I were both people who were leading aspects of it, called Voyage of Aloha. aloha being this quality of friendship, of harmony, of love for one another. So, Roger, please go ahead.
I read a book some years ago and met the authors on Kauai. The book is called The Cultural Creatives, and it talks about the similarities of the beliefs we have with people who seem to be on quite different sides of the opposite poles. And what really fascinated me was it said, when 10% of the people get an idea, it's on its way to becoming mainstream. And when 20% get it, it is mainstream. And one of the things I got out of that was we don't have to worry about the 45, 50% of the people who don't agree with the way we see the world in the United States and elsewhere. We just need to preach to the choir and get 10% or 20% to believe what we see as really where humanity should be going. And so I take that to take a little of the heat off, a little of the pressure of worry that the other side is winning. And that allows me to not be so unhappy about it and get to where I don't want to be. I don't want to jump into their camp with anger. I want to be moving in a direction of peace. And so I thought that was an interesting philosophy that has helped me.
Roger has also done a lot in terms of the Forgiveness Project, which reminds me of what you were saying, Prakashji, in terms of tolerance.
Thank you, Roger. It's good to know all the work that you do on peace and tolerance. I agree with you, and I would just add that truth can be found in minority. It doesn't have to be majority. Truth is truth. Self-belief is important. It could be small numbers. It could still be the right track.
Donna's in Santa Barbara, California.
Hello. Thank you so very much for this wonderful, wonderful evening. Seems to me it's that you're sharing a lifetime of a practice of truth. In that regard, I was wondering what you thought was, or what's the additional element that song gives to prayer?
The prayers that we do are songs itself. Donna, thank you for being in this circle today. The songs and prayers are pretty much complementary to each other. But when the prayers are done in a group, it's extremely important that they are done in a rhythm. They are extremely, it's important that people follow and they are together in what they are sharing, the words. And that's why the songs make it easier to have the prayers in the form of songs. It becomes easier for all to be on the same page. Also in devotion, because this goes beyond Gandhi's time, which is only, 150 years. In devotion culture of India, the songs have played a very important role in prayers, in all the religious prayers. And once again, regardless of religion, whichever religion is there in India, the prayers have been sung. So there is a history and there is a present relevance as well.
Do you feel as if the singing element of it helps it to not be merely words that are coming from the mind, but also helps it sink into the heart? Somehow that singing and singing together arouses that element of the heart.
Yes, definitely. The impact undoubtedly in our view is deeper. It's more sustained, and it also generates more interests in people who are joining the prayers. Otherwise, for new attendees, it becomes very difficult to be a part of the prayer, which is not sung, because singing is easier than just reciting a prayer.
I'd like to turn it back over to Cliff.
Gosh, Prakash, it's been a wonderful hour to spend with you on the other side of the world. I don't know how, it's one of the good things about modern technology, I guess. But it feels like when we came to visit India, I found that I was no longer in my head, but more in my heart. And I feel that way right now. Again, you brought us back to that heart center where, you know, all good things come from, where all days should begin, as you were saying, and the value of starting from that kind of deep and collective center that we all share as part of one humanity. And it's been a great honor to have you visit us. And I just want to, on behalf of all of us, express our gratitude to you. That's part of the theme too, is gratitude. So remember, before we went to Rajasthan, Sandhya and I decided to look at where the address of Gravis in Jodhpur on Google Earth. And I looked at it and I came down from way up in space on Google Earth and got closer and closer to the Gravis headquarters. And I literally saw cows walking down the street from Google Earth because they are in the milkman colony, and there's cows everywhere around where their offices are. It's the most beautiful place, and the most beautiful, beautiful people, the most heartful people are part of the Gravis organization. So anyways, Prakash, thank you so much for joining us from way over there early in the morning. And thank you so much for sharing, as Donna was saying, a lifetime of deep, prayerful and meditative energy that you shared with us today. So thank you so much.
Thank you also, actually, Prakash ji, for giving up your own prayer time to speak with us right at the time of the Sandhya when the sun was rising, and you would have been out with your people in prayer. So thank you for being with us instead. We so appreciate it. Namaste.